Welcome all hunters, anglers, trappers, and shooters to the only fish and wildlife conservation podcast that goes behind the scenes of the business of conservation, the Connecting with Conservation podcast. Our podcast is hosted by John Gassett from the Wildlife Management Institute and Jim Cucaruto of the Outdoor Stewards of Conservation Foundation. John and Jim will talk with experts from all sectors of the conservation arena about their passion for conserving the great outdoors. So please welcome our hosts of the Connecting with Conservation podcast, John and Jim.
Welcome to another episode of Connecting with Conservation, the only podcast that goes into the business of how conservation is paid for in our country. I'm John Gassett with the Wildlife Management Institute, and I'm your co-host with Connecting with Conservation. I'm here with my fellow co-host, Jim Cucaruto from Outdoor Stewards of Conservation. How are you doing today, Jim?
Doing great and excited yet again for another great episode of Connecting with Conservation podcast. We've got a first that I'll get to right after a little bit of a story about the company of today's guest. So we've got on a few folks from gunbroker.com, and whether you heard about it or not, it's been around quite some time. I've been working with Gunbroker for probably 13 years. Back when I was with NSSF, we had come up with the term modern sporting rifle, and nobody knew what that was, and it was my job to figure out, owners of that AR platform, what they were buying, why they were buying it, and, just learn all about the consumers of modern sporting rifles. So in order to, use that term, but then also have people understand what it was, we surveyed them, but we started the survey with a video, and there was Jim at the range with his AR-15 platform. I think it was an R-15 at the time, camoed out, and I could not get the script right, so I put on my cool shooting glasses and, wrote a little board and finally got it right. But I was wondering, how are we going to distribute this to AR-15 owners? So Gunbroker had a big list at the time, and we're selling a lot of AR-15s, and they promoted that for us, and we got thousands of responses for them. So we learned a lot about the AR-15 consumer, and a lot of that information then got used for, developing the market for it. So big thanks to Gunbroker for stuff like that. But we're going to hear about more of the how Gunbroker connects to conservation with two great guys that I'll let introduce themselves, Josh and Alan, and not the football player Josh Allen, but two separate guys. So Alan, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, hi, Alan Forkner, the VP of PR and Brand Management for Gunbroker. It's 13 years is a pretty good track record, about middle of the road. I think we just rolled into 26 years, so glad to have you around, though.
And Josh Perrone, Advocacy Relations Manager. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, one of my favorite things about Gunbroker is how huge it is. Again, I mean, it's not just guns, right? You guys sell more than guns on Gunbroker or auction them off. So what do you think are some other than firearms? What are the big products that are being auctioned off there on Gunbroker? Or maybe even start us off for those that don't know about what Gunbroker is.
Yeah, happy to. Back in '99, our founder was trying to sell some firearms parts on eBay, and I think everybody can guess how well that went over. And being a smart guy who understood computers and software, said, you know what, to hell with this, I'm going to do it myself, and which is kind of the origin story of a lot of the shooting sports companies when you think about it. So we created Gunbroker in 1999. It started out, the easiest way to explain it was eBay for guns. And that's really what it was for probably the first half of its life. But these days I like to refer to it more as the pre-prime Amazon. So certainly plenty of auctions out there. You can get in there, get some bidding excitement going on, find some great values. We've also got buy nows, we've got make offers. So it's really kind of a one-stop shop for all things obviously firearms related. I mean, it's kind of right there in the name, but really anything hunt, shoot related. You can even find some fishing, archery products on there. We've got some of our sellers who really are the ones who bring in the inventory. We're a true broker. We just connect the buyers and the sellers. Sometimes list some really off the wall stuff. We've got really strong memorabilia, militaria, firearms. Certainly dominate our listings. Ammunition is right up there as well. Certainly, if you've got a classic firearm that maybe is a little hard to find ammo for, I could probably promise you we've got some available. Parts, big parts options as well. So really, if it relates to hunting, shooting, angling, trapping, our friends the hats, you can probably find it on Gunbroker.
So it's interesting you mentioned that about finding, hard to find ammunition. I've used Gunbroker a number of times. Probably not in the last year, but back when I was buying and selling more firearms, I did use it frequently. And I acquired through a friend of mine an 8-gauge market gun, and I had it looked at by a gunsmith and by the fine guns folks at Cabela's, and they said, "Yeah, it's probably serviceable, but you got to find, shells for it." And that's the one place I found 8-gauge shells. Now, I never bought any because they said even if it's serviceable, I probably wouldn't shoot it. These are the gun folks. I'm like, well, yeah, probably. I'm gonna look and see, but they were about $25 a piece, so they're not cheap, but nobody else had them, and I found 2 or 3 sources on Gunbroker for 8-gauge shotgun shells.
Yeah, it's funny with our podcast, we work with a historian as our host, and Logan has always come up with these esoteric, off the wall, no one's ever heard of them before, firearms and whatnot. And I really struggle not to be able to find the ammo for them. We've talked about everything from the gyrojet, which if you got a gyrojet sitting around, A, you're really cool, and B, you probably need ammo. And we probably have it listed. Trounds, the little triangular shaped bullets that I forget who it was. I'm not the historian, obviously, but the Trounds that someone tried once, some of those exist on there. Some old pinfire ammo. It's crazy what some folks have just sitting around in their basement.
I'd have probably been more aggressive about those shells had it had been legal for me to go. It'd be cool to say I shot a turkey with an 8-gauge market gun or a goose, but you can't do that anywhere. So I was like, why would I really want to buy the ammo when I'm not going to shoot it? But it's an extensive site. I'll have to say that.
And then I noticed too, and it's out of my league, but you guys have a collector's elite section as well. Is that correct, or is that a newer
Collector's
option?
Elite's been around a little over, well, I guess right about a year now. And that is our higher end items. So those we're working with some of the really experts in that space, like Bryant Ridge and a few others that are known nationally and internationally as handling some of the finest collectibles out there. And it's a really tightly curated collection. Just an average gunbroker seller can't necessarily get into that. They've got to be vetted and kind of invited. The collections are smaller. We're right now we're running once a month. They run for 2 weeks. 20 to 30 items, but these aren't, no offense, these aren't Glock 19s. We had, what did we have? It was Colt single action serial number 53, I think, in February. We have one of 7, in February, we also had one of 17 Colt Python, what are those? The Serpentine sets, all matching, all with their boxes, all with their paperwork. I don't know where some of these guys come up with them, but these are some really special, unique firearms. So, collectorseliteauctions.com. We've got a collection usually starts the first Sunday in March, runs to the third Sunday in March. So if you're into seeing some unusual, interesting, stunningly beautiful stuff, Collectors Elite's a pretty cool place to hang out.
So I just clicked on your site. I tell Jim that the problem with this podcast is it's costing me a lot of money because every time I go to a different vendor or different guest site, it's like, ooh, I gotta have that. I bought a suppressor after Silencer Shop, another suppressor, and just to use their system and try it out. But I just clicked on your site, not even in the sort of the high end side of things, but just in gun parts. I gotta have these genuine cross-cut mammoth ivory grips for 1911. Now I gotta have those. I'm gonna go in there. That is awesome. Now, I mean, where do you find mammoth ivory grips for your 1911? Anywhere else?
John, I feel your pain both, in my soul and my wallet. Now keep in mind, Josh and I work here, so it's, and because of our model with, the way it's sellers listing things, there's no employee discounts either. We just we suffer the pain. What was the one, Josh, the other day? And someone put out an M134, no letter required minigun. I try to GoFundMe, but wiser heads pointed out that I probably couldn't afford the ammunition, let alone the minigun.
You could buy a pickup truck,
which you would need to mount said minigun on. So,
Well, there's 2 ways that I can easily connect Gunbroker to conservation. One, obviously, you sell a lot of excise tax products that we can get into a little bit. But 2, and I run a nonprofit, Outdoor Stewards Conservation 501c3 nonprofit, and we focus on conservation and communication, and we need to generate some revenue. And one day, Josh, gave me a call up and said, "Hey, let me help you set up a gun broker store, and we can auction off stuff. You can put stuff on there. We don't charge any fees or anything like that." And I'm not a technical guy by any means, but Josh was persistent and got this old dog to get a gun broker store up. And you do that for a lot of nonprofits, conservation focused, right, Josh? Or
Absolutely, yeah. And obviously happy to have you there. But yeah, we work with a number of nonprofits, mostly in the conservation space, but as Second Amendment focus groups, as well as veteran organizations as well. So we cover the whole gamut there, and we are those people, so it's important to us that we support that. So.
So if somebody, runs a nonprofit, they could reach out to you, and then it's not a hard process. It's just, a lot of guys that run nonprofits aren't very technical.
Yeah, it's very simple. We kind of have it at this point down to a science. I mean, we start with, we can even garner stuff from your site. We can gather images, videos, stuff like that, and kind of incorporate it into a landing page or a store, as we call them on the site internally. Or, if you do have, access to your own assets, we can put that together. The graphics team is great and churns those out pretty frequently for us. So we have it down to science. Once we get that page done, we then we sit down with Seller Assist on the sales side of the house, and then we go over things if you'd like to utilize it as a way to do some additional fundraising, and it's worked out quite well. So.
Yeah, I tell you what. Now, Alan went into all the products, but now there's experiences on there, and one of my board members, Jen Wisniewski, is she works for the National Deer Association, and you helped her set up a store, and she's a way better marketer than I am, and smarter and all that sort of stuff. But she told me R&D stands for rip off and duplicate. So after she set up her store, I went and looked at it, and she had all these auctions for hunts and for fishing. And I mean, you have those auctions as well, right?
Yeah, we've really seen an uptick in that and a lot of success. I mean, originally the nonprofit store idea just kind of looked for a way to expand on what folks were doing in their banquets already. There's a long history of organizations having donation guns that they then, auction off at their annual banquets, and it's been a great source of fundraising. And we're like, well, that's great. You get a couple hundred people at a banquet, and it's probably a lot of the same people year over year over year. Where with the store now, we've opened this up to really anybody. I mean, we've got north of 8 million users on the site as it is, but now with like the Outdoor Stewards can promote it to their body as well and get folks in there. So now it's not just the people at the banquets. Well, as that evolved and we saw success in that, and I'd love to take credit for it. I mean, Josh and I like to think we're smart guys, but I forget who did it first, but they started putting up hunts and experiences. So, go, and these aren't like, 12-person dove hunts in Argentina. Some of them were a little more basic, like, you're going to go turkey hunting with one of our biologists at his property, go fly fishing with some of our board members. The one that I thought was so cool, and it kills me that I don't remember who did it, but it was an experience. One of their ambassadors kind of has that Sam Elliott voice and vibe. He's a hunting guide, but he's got that gravitas. And one of the experiences was literally, if you win it, you get into a Zoom call with him, and the two of you sit there and drink whiskey together while he tells you hunting stories. I mean,
I'd bid on that.
Yeah, it's a super cool experience. It's crazy unique. It's kind of a little bit like what Cameo does, where you get the celebrity to send your wife a birthday message, but it's a new and creative way to help raise funds for conservation. So it's great to sell a shotgun or auction off a shotgun, but sometimes something a little different stands out and really succeeds.
Yeah, and to Alan's point too, at this point we've had more than one organization literally not list anything firearm related, just equipment type items, and then experiences like this, hunts, fishing trips, and do quite well. We're talking like 43 grand in some cases, 37 grand was another one. And these are their first auctions ever on the site. So, and again, low overhead, or if they don't have any products that's donated, that's a great way to bring funds in that
I think
doesn't
actually I think to that point, Josh, NDA was one of the first to kind of kick that
Correct.
off. So
Yep. Yep.
I said R&D, baby. You're gonna be sad
Tell
she told
Jen.
me that story.
So, Alan, tell us a little bit about the reach of GunBroker. I mean, how many subscribers do you have? How many buyers and sellers? And obviously, a lot of them are in a lot of cases the same person too. So, because sometimes I have to sell before I can buy.
we do see a lot of that. Yeah, you fund your next toy by selling off the previous one.
Correct.
Registered users. Again, we're a little bit north of 8 million right now, and we're pretty conservative and tight on how we count those. So if someone signs up just to check things out and never comes back, but those are our fairly stout engaged customers. So they're there frequently. Yeah, we've buyers and sellers. That number is all over the place so much that we have a hard time tracking it. But I know just our FFL partners, the ones that have registered in to agree to take transfers for folks, is around 32,000 FFLs at any given time. So they can figure it out pretty quick, and that's something I think people don't necessarily think about GunBroker is a large percentage of our sellers are that same brick and mortar mom and pop gun shop down the street. We don't consider it a competition against them. We consider it a way for them to take their foot traffic on a national level without having to invest in a full e-commerce site and marketing and promotion around it. So, we see ourselves as trying to help those folks survive against some of the big boxes. So, it's really crazy. Our numbers just stagger me on a daily basis. I came to GunBroker out of the agency side, so I was pretty familiar with what a good email list should be and good open rates and whatnot. And the numbers are crazy. I think just in our last 45 days of engagement, it's something like 3 or 4 million people. So our fans love us. They love coming in shopping. But beyond that, they love coming and doing research as well. If you're looking for trying to figure out a price or a value on something, it's a great resource for that. If you're looking at availabilities, inventories, it's a great research tool for that as well. So while helping folks sell product is certainly our bread and butter, there's a whole lot of other uses and resources people have in GunBroker.
Yeah, and between that 8 million and I'm looking at some of your partners too. That you've got some that have some big membership lists too. NRA and NSSF and USA Shooting and all. You've got some reach, and that explains. Jim kicked it off talking about the Lexicon modern sporting rifle, which I was in an agency when that happened, and my first reaction was, it's not going to buy this. They know what they are. They're not going to buy this, and it rapidly became the common lexicon for AR-15 platforms. And I won't say it's accepted by everyone because someone will never accept them under any terminology, but it's become much more common to hear that number, that phrase than what some other folks have called them in the past. So, I'm an AR-15 owner and builder. I love messing with them. So. But having that reach and that ability to communicate that message to that many people, whether they're actively buying or not, that's huge, at least from our perspective.
What's so exciting about being a part of GunBroker is our CEO likes to use the word agnostic. I like to say we're Switzerland. We sell everybody. We help everybody buy anything. So we're not necessarily limited in the folks that we can partner with and work with. At the end of the day, we're not really concerned if, the SIGs are selling great or the Glocks are selling great. We just want to help people, sell everything great. So that really makes a wide open door for Josh to really contact and work with just about anybody in the space. Which, John, as you know, from an agency side, you had your clients and you couldn't touch anybody else in that space. You had your gun company, you had your optics company, so on and so forth. And now having, basically the entire industry to work with it's so cool.
And on this side of the house too, in terms of nonprofits and conservation groups, if we're not all rowing in the right direction, we're going to get crushed. We need to, instead of looking at each other like adversarially, like we all want the same things, whether we're outdoor stewards or any of the other number of conservation groups out there, or veteran organizations, or Second Amendment things. We all want pretty much the same thing. We might have specific interests inside those things, but the other side has deep pockets, and we need to also kind of do those things too. So.
Well, I know you just, so you said specific interests, and you and I share a big interest of waterfowling. So I haven't poked around much. You pretty much get anything you need for waterfowling on Gunbroker as well, or?
Equipment, we do have equipment as well, and we do have campaigns, that we specifically target, people that may or may not be interested in certain, like obviously deer hunting, waterfowl, turkey, you name it. We do have a campaign usually for it. So yeah, you can find things, Jim, from calls to blinds to, geez, anything really. Again, guns and ammo, bread and butter, but also search us for other things too, because you'll be surprised. You'll see vehicles. There's everything. So um, we tend to have it all, which is good.
Yeah, we're a little out of season, so I'm guessing it's a little on the low side, but we're about 1,000 listings for waiters right now. Just taking a
Wow.
quick look. So
No kidding. So you're the numbers guy with them, Alan, and I used to do, came up with the adjusted NICs while I was at NSSF, and it was always hard for people to, look at an Excel spreadsheet. But I was at SHOT Show recently, and you presented on a new way to look at data, and you guys have a lot of data that's helpful to the industry, so they can make better decisions and get more money that they can then turn around and give to conservation.
yeah, that was a partnership we did with the National Shooting Sports Foundation, who, they put out the NICS checks numbers. I forget if that's monthly or quarterly. And you're right. It's kind of the gold standard in our industry that we use for measuring the health and success, but they're kind of clunky. You've really got to be a data nerd to get in there and understand them. And I mean, my degree is journalism, which is Latin for can't balance a checkbook. So having a way to kind of easier understand that, parse it down a little bit better. Our group from Outdoor Analytics, which is the data and research side of Gunbroker, worked with the NSSF to build the NICS reporting and analysis tool, which takes that data and really just reorganizes it in a way that NSSF members and brands around the industry can better take it all in, understand it, get some information out of it. We do it at both the national and the state level. And, we track or help them track things from, the basics like just the number of NICS checks, either adjusted or raw, by handgun, by long gun. But we also get more granular. We look at the movement where, which states are gaining traction, which aren't, which state do handguns outpace long guns. We even break it down by the day of the week, looking back over a year or so. If you're going to launch a new product, a new handgun product, and let me scroll down here. If you're going to launch a new handgun product, I probably wouldn't do it in March. It's a pretty light month for NICS checks. If you can hold out till May, that's when you've got the consumers in your shops on our website with their wallets out looking to buy. And there's some interesting nuggets that always come out of that. You expect Saturdays to be hot. Not a shock. I've been in a gun shop on a Saturday. I know it's busy. Christmas Eve day, though, a lot of people doing some last minute shopping. April 15th, which I think makes sense because nothing makes you want to go exercise your freedom a little bit more than cutting a check to the IRS. The one that I always get a kick out of, though, one of the hottest days in May, Mother's Day. That just warms my heart.
I was wondering about the IRS question, or the tax day question. Are those the people that are writing a check to the IRS, or the people getting a check back from the IRS?
It's probably more the latter than the former, I'm guessing. Yeah, but
By the time I get through writing my check, there's not much left in the bank account to spend on guns.
that's probably true. Yeah, but I am happy to see that there are a lot of very loving sons and daughters out there going ahead and making sure that mom's got the latest and greatest. So yeah, we just we felt again that was something that we could do to just help the industry continue to grow, continue to make good decisions. Especially that we're in a little bit of a tough market right now. So helping companies be better, just to Josh's point, gets everybody rowing in the same direction and just kind of lifts everybody up. So that one I believe is available to NSSF members through their sites. So. If you are a member, go ahead and give them a shout, and they'll get you login credentials for it. But it's kind of like when you first got Google Analytics on whatever, you found yourself just spending hours digging through the most esoteric data, and you can find yourself down a rabbit hole on this stuff pretty quick too.
So for our listeners, because we have a lot of listeners that may not be familiar as we are with gun purchases and gun broker and all that, how do you tell us how you navigate the 4473 form through Gunbroker? Because I'm assuming there's several avenues to do that.
Yeah, and it's one that everyone's already familiar with.
Yep.
If you walk into a gun shop and point at a Remington 870 and said, "I'd like that," then you'll fill out a 4473 and whatever other requirements your state has. Some, like I'm in Nebraska, for example. To purchase a handgun, we have to have either a handgun purchase certificate, which is good for I think 5 years. You get it from the sheriff's department; it's about $10, or a concealed carry permit. They can't sell you a handgun in the state without that. So, that we produce that, do a 4473, everything checks, clears out, you walk out with your shotgun. It works the exact same way on Gunbroker. Really, the best way to think about it is it's a lot like special ordering something. Just instead of having the guy behind the counter special order it from his dealer or his rep group or his wholesaler, you're ordering it directly from another dealer. So you buy a firearm, suppressor, machine gun, any regulated good, you buy it on Gunbroker and conduct the transaction part with the seller. They then have to transfer it to an FFL in your state. And after that, it's the same as anything else. You walk in, say, "Hey, I'm Alan. You should have a M134 minigun back there for me. Let's get the paperwork started." And then the rest of the transaction is exactly like buying a firearm over the counter. So local FFLs, again, that's where our network of 31 plus thousand FFL partners is so critical. There's probably good odds there's one near you. You make the arrangements. Whatever you buy gets shipped to them, and then you just handle the paperwork at the counter like you would any other way.
Yeah. Fascinating. Well, I'm from Kentucky, so you have to qualify here to buy a handgun. You have to be breathing or have recently taken a breath, but that's pretty much it. But that is fascinating. But we always like to ask that because, we constantly fight this battle about, you can order a firearm online and ship directly to your door and there's no background check. Now, yes, there is, just the way it is. And that's this other side likes to take that approach. It's that alarmist, mentality that, people are getting these things and nobody knows about it. Well, there's a process and legitimate sellers and buyers are going through that process. So,
Yep. Yeah. The requirement, it's got to get shipped to an FFL. And, one of the things we've recently brought into the site is we've started working with a shipping partner to streamline the process for FFLs to ship to other FFLs. But it's also open if you're just a private citizen like you, John, and you sell a firearm on Gunbroker, you can do that. But you still have to ship it to an FFL. Well, not a lot of people are comfortable with that or understand that. So again, we've built in a shipping solution now where you can get some decent rates and everything's pretty automated for you. You can ship your personal gun to an FFL, so whoever bought it can do the transfer and take possession.
Which actually may help with the private sales, because if it's easier to do on Gunbroker, but you got the background check integrated, then those are at least going through a process first and easier than versus me driving halfway to Tennessee for somebody to look at a gun I'm trying to sell them, and maybe they buy it, maybe they don't. But it seems like a lot of time and energy wasted there when you just put it on Gunbroker and sell it that way and ship it to the FFL and you're done with it.
The wider reach too.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Yeah, you're not, you're not putting it up on the bulletin board at the local trap club and hoping somebody wants it, or, finding an online classified that'll let you post it, which there's not a lot of those out there. No. And then at the end of the day, like you said, John, you've got somebody who wants to buy it. Now I'm meeting him at the rest stop at mile marker 431 near Grand Island, Nebraska. He knows I'm coming with a gun. So, well, who knows what's going to happen. Exactly. And this, the old advice was always, well, get a picture of their driver's license. And, again, in Nebraska, and I've done it before, if I sell off a handgun to a private citizen, they by law are supposed to show me that card, but does everybody follow that? I'd like to think they do, but yeah, going through Gunbroker, that's all completely taken out of the equation. You've got confidence knowing that whoever's buying that gun, they're going to have to prove that they are a good person to take possession of it in their state. It also helps, we know some states have certain regulations on the types of firearms you can own. So there's also some nice protections there too. Maybe I just moved to a more restrictive state. I have no idea that they've banned MSRs or whatever. I buy one on Gunbroker. Well, when the dealer sees that order come in, he's going to instantly flag it and say, I'm sorry, you can't legally do that here. So, instead of as the seller now sending a restricted product to a state that they're not allowed to, that kind of gets cut off at the front of things too. So it's just protection all the way around. It makes sure that everything's done in a above board and legal manner, that the people buying it are who they say they are, the people selling it are who they say they are. Our infrastructure and engineering team spend probably as much time on security and anti-scam programs as they do keeping the site up and running, and that's it's a Herculean task to work on that. So between know your customer data, two-level or two-factor authentication, there's a lot of security built into GunBroker that not a lot of people see, and that's good because if they don't know it's there, it means it's working.
Yeah. Well, the other, there's another benefit that I can see is that, for a group like Jim's or for like ours, if we, or even for-profit companies, there are states that have restrictions or not restrictions, but process you have to go through to have an auction or a raffle or those sorts of, and they're different in every state and they're sometimes confusing, but y'all sort of crack that nut. You can do this nationally versus if I want to do one, I've got to go get a charitable gaming license for Kentucky, and it gets, in some states, require it for everything like that. Some we're not as restrictive. It's raffles we have to have it, any kind of what they consider games of chance. But auctions we can get by with. But some states even that's regulated, I guess. So it's nice to have somebody else has kind of done the work for you. You just log into their site, become a member, and do your business, and you don't have to worry about all the black box stuff that happens behind the scenes.
Right, and from a headache, or sorry, Alan, I was going to say from a headache perspective too, or from a selling perspective, like if you are cautious or you just don't want to deal with the headache, say you're a dealer, you can exclude certain states that you don't want to list that particular firearm in. So if you'd like to exclude California, for example, or another, you can filter that out, and then you don't even deal with the aspect of someone potentially bidding that shouldn't be. So.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of working with all the local shops is they know the rules, they know the regs, they know the processes. We try to stay as abreast of them as we can, but certainly no one's going to know it better than probably your local independent shop that's been fighting with the legislature to prevent it from being passed or get it repealed. So they're the on the grounds folks who absolutely understand how to do it legally, how to do it right. So that's really the beauty of the system there. And I would also be remiss if I didn't point out the valet program where if you have things you want to sell, but maybe you're not comfortable with the process. Maybe it's the websites aren't exactly in your ballpark. Not to paint too broad of a brush of ageism here, but if you're a little bit older than technology is comfortable with, our valet program is really simple. Basically, you come into that site, log in what you're looking to sell. Our valet partners all take a look at it. The ones who are interested, they make proposals, so you get to choose which one you like the best. You can either do it as a consignment where they'll sell it, take a little bit of a cut, pay you the rest, or they'll flat out buy it off of you and then do whatever they want with it. So we have ways that between dealing with state to state regulations, between dealing with discomfort of using technology, there's really no reason not to be able to use GunBroker. We've tried to make it as easy as we can for everybody who wants to buy and sell.
Very cool. Well, thanks, guys, for filling us in. First, thanks for doing everything you're doing. Communicating with gun owners, making it easier to find thousands and thousands of listings out there. And Josh, why don't you tell us a little bit about somebody new going, how they can find the nonprofit stores, and then Alan, maybe you can wrap us up with websites and social media and plug your Lowballers podcast as well.
Sure. Yeah, I'll go first. So yeah, it's pretty simple to find the nonprofit stores page. You'll utilize the obviously going to gunbroker.com. Top right hand corner, you'll see stores. Click on that, and then you'll be able to filter it to nonprofit and foundation stores. And then you can browse that and feel free to support everybody or your favorite one, and especially ones like Jim where fill a bag and bring in a friend like with the Come With program. That's huge. Like very very simple, but things, especially if you don't have big pieces of woods, that's a simple thing you can do to keep the woods clean. Obviously, when we go hunting, we go afield. We want to feel like we're in the field and not at the dump. So that's huge. So make sure you support Outdoor Stewards of Conservation Foundation.
All right, the check's in the mail. Thanks, Josh.
Exactly. Yeah, I got my hand like this.
And then, for everything else, I mean, everything kind of comes off of gunbroker.com. It's kind of right there in the name. So if you're looking for us on socials, just hit up gunbroker.com. We've got the buttons at the bottom of the page that'll take you to pretty much everything we do. collectorseliteauctions.com. That's our high-end premier shop. Again, social media all comes off of that as well. And then if you like hearing some of the backstories on both the firearms and kind of the people involved in it, we try not to be your typical history podcast of, in 1903, John Browning decided, we'll get into it a little bit, but we try to make it a little bit more applicable to the real world. So that's the No Lowballers podcast. We drop every Thursday. Again, you can find us on the Gunbroker page as well as YouTube. And really anywhere you consume podcasts, you should be able to download the show. So we try to be pretty easy to find.
Awesome. Well, Alan, Josh, thank y'all for coming on. Thank you for what you do. You're an integral part of conservation. Let's face it, if people want to hunt or they want to shoot recreationally, they got to have the equipment to do it. I mean, you're putting those buyers and sellers together at a fantastic rate. We appreciate all you do for conservation. Jim, as always, good to see you again. And to our listeners, please listen to this podcast and download some of our others. Subscribe if you would. That way you'll get notices every time a new one drops. And other than that, we'll see you in the woods or on the water.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Connecting with Conservation podcast. Please do us a favor and tell your buddies, friends, family, and others about what you've learned here today. If you like what you heard, come on back anytime and listen to another episode of the Connecting with Conservation podcast.